Me, 25 female, with my fiance, 25 male, together 5 years, I cheated and I'm not sure how to handle his response. I recognize that what I did was wrong, and I make no attempt to deny or justify it. I feel terrible about it, and I will do all in my power to make it right. So although I realize that calling me names is okay, I'm actually searching for suggestions on what to do next. I went to see my sister at her school quite early in our relationship, 6 weeks to be precise. The second night there, we went to a big party, and I was dancing and drinking, and one man in particular was hitting on me, and as the night progressed I began flirting back. I offer no excuses, I was drinking but not inebriated, and he did not ape or use me. I just made a terrible decision and ended up accompanying him back to his room. I knew it was wrong the instant it began, and I ended up weeping as I laid there. I got up and went as soon as he finished. I still don't know his last name. My sister was so inebriated that she went home with a friend and had no idea I hadn't spent the night at her house since I arrived before she did. I returned home, guilt-ridden, and even though I knew it would cost me, my new lover, at the moment, I was going to tell him and ask him to forgive me. When I visit him the following day, he is already upset. He did not get the job offer he expected, and he is quite down. I determined not to contribute to his melancholy, so I spent the whole day trying to cheer him up and be a comfort to him. Then the next time I meet him, he is overjoyed because he says I was able to make him forget about how bad his life was at the time, something I didn't tell him about. Yes, I was wrong both times, but I was young, immature, and terrified. After those 2 occasions, we were getting along so well that I simply told myself that nobody except myself and the other man knew anything had occurred. So why destroy a good thing when I knew I'd never do it again and I'd never see or hear from this other person? Let's fast forward to 2 months ago. We've been together for years, and in fact, we've been together longer than any of our friends have been with their significant others. We adore each other and share a home. He proposes marriage to me. I was ecstatic and, of course, said yes. We notified our relatives and friends, and everyone was delighted for us. But 2 days after he asks, I'm overcome with remorse. I phoned in sick to work because I was unable to function and spent the whole morning weeping on the sofa. I was a liar and a cheat, and I had duped my boyfriend into proposing when, in reality, if he had known about it from the start, he would have probably ended the relationship. I knew I couldn't go on living like that for the rest of my life and resolved that no matter how he was feeling, I had to tell him. The second significant aspect of this is that I am his first and only sexual partner. He knew I had been with another person before we met, but it didn't upset him, or so I believed. When he gets home, he notices that I'm a shambles and asks what's wrong. When I inform him, he is naturally distraught and emotional. I tell him that I will go to any length to prove to him that I have never done anything like that since, and that I would never do anything like that in the future. I offered to let him go through my tablet, phone, Facebook, or anything else, but he says it's not required since he doesn't want us to live like that. He said that he needed some alone time to ponder and that he would sleep on the sofa. I informed him that I would give him as much time as he needed, but that I would be the one sleeping on the sofa, not him. He is silent the following morning, but he shows no ill will toward me. I just inquired whether he was all right, since I didn't want to delve into his thoughts. He informed me that he was, of course, wounded and unhappy. He said that the most difficult aspect for him was the time period since he doesn't know it. Being unhappy is legitimate or ridiculous at this point in time. I told him he had every right to be unhappy, and we both went to work. After a week, he seemed to be getting better by the day, to the point where we both went out to celebrate our engagement with one of his buddies. Everything was well until Wednesday, when he informed me that he would be returning from work quite late. This doesn't concern me since it's a very common occurrence. Once they start on a job, they can't stop until it's finished, and there have been occasions when it's taken 16 hours. So I spent the evening catching up on some work I had fallen behind on, watching a movie I knew he wouldn't like, and then going to bed. When I awoke the following morning, he was still not there. I texted him to see where he was. He just answered, "I'm on my way home." We passed each other on the street on our way to work. When I phone him, he just states that he stayed later than intended and was heading home to rest. Okay, this isn't usual, but he did warn me and he wasn't acting strange or suspicious, so I simply went about my business. When I get home, he is sitting in the living room, waiting for me. To cut a long tale short, he informed me that he spent the night before with Tracy, a married lady from his workplace. I just passed out on my chair. He then goes on to say that this was a one-time occurrence, that she is in an open marriage, that he has no emotions for her, and that she has no affections for him. However, he said that he was utterly immobilized with rage and jealousy over my having slept with this other person, as well as my past relationship. He said that he knew he was wrong, but he felt compelled to be with someone else just once so he wouldn't be so worried about me being with other people, despite the fact that he had only been with me. Of course, I began weeping, and then became enraged and began shouting at him. Then he stops me and says, "Why am I shouting at him? I cheated first, and when he found out, he never shouted at me, which is true." He says he regrets the action, feels like he cheapened himself in the process, but that although he is sad it has upset me. He says that even though it was wrong, and he knows it was wrong, he says he's sorry, but felt like it was something he had to do. He now wants us to go on as if nothing had occurred. I'm at a loss on what to do next. I'd be the greatest hypocrite in the world if I left him, but I'm so upset that I'm not sure where we go from here. Please accept my apologies for the wall of words. Any advice would be much appreciated. Story 2. Should I 23 male leave my wife, 28 female, only after 1 year? I met my wife when I was 19 years old. I had recently left a 4-year high school romance because I wanted to relocate across the nation and felt bogged down by it. I met my wife at my first job in the new city. We worked together for a year before dating for a few months. I encountered financial problems at the conclusion of my year there and had to return home. We remained in a relationship at this period. After a few months of regaining financial stability, I relocated across the nation to live with my then-girlfriend. Although living together was enjoyable initially, it soon became apparent that we had fallen out of love. She refused to speak to me or confide in me. We both became sad. I ended up conversing with an old childhood acquaintance of mine. I didn't even attempt to disguise it since I didn't want to be found out. I needed to go out, but I didn't want to be the one to put a stop to it since she had done so much for me. I realized this was a terrible thing to do. She threatened to throw me out when she found out. We reconciled, but I decided to return home for a while. After a time at home, I thought we should call it quits. So we did, but we didn't stop talking. One thing I've realized about myself is that I dislike being alone. I suppose I began dating her because I was lonely and she was the first one to express interest in me. After a few months at home, I determined that the military was the only way to go to my ideal career, pilot, amazing, wonderful. I picked the Air Force, and during basic training, my first phone call made me realize how alone I had become. I phoned my parents, who both expressed their pride in me. The parents have divorced. I had a few minutes left, so I dialed her number. She was happy she had a new job, new friends, and a new apartment. She was even conversing with other men. I felt very alone, and I called her once a week. She sent me letters in which she told me what she had been up to, and she was even chatting to other males. I told her on the phone that I still loved her, and I did at the moment. I went to visit her after training, since I was allowed to go home for Christmas for a week, and we hit it off just like we used to. It seemed like I was speaking to a new lady, as if I had never met her before. I felt like I'd fallen in love all over again. To keep the relationship going, I did the foolish military thing and asked her to marry me. Yup, we were married, and after 8 months of training for my profession and being apart from her, I was stationed in Korea. I haven't spent more than 2 weeks with her since before I went back home, and now it seems that we have returned to this rut. It's the same spot where she can't confide in me. I'm so estranged. I'm feeling lonely once again. I'll be in Korea for another 6 months before I can even live with her again at my next post. I'm about to go on a mid-tour, which allows me to take up to 30 days off. Initially, I plan to take 20 days off to see her and her family. My family is quite dispersed, but I've always wanted to go throughout the globe, and I'm in the position to do it, and I have the funds to do it. She has 2 dogs as a full-time dog parent. She also works and is extremely enthusiastic about training, so we couldn't afford to bring her. Flying is difficult for her since she has health difficulties. To top it all off, we discovered she may have type 2 diabetes. What am I supposed to do? Should I stay in Korea till I'm done, and we can attempt living together again, I travel home for my mid-tour? Or should I tell her I don't believe I can do it and go to Europe on my own for my mid-tour? Please express your thoughts. I already know I'm a terrible person, so please be kind with me. Thank you for your time, and please accept my apologies for the lengthy narrative.